Welcome to the inaugural edition of Berklee Online Live. We're off to a bumpy start, but great things come from mistakes, I think. This is a bi-weekly interview series in which the listeners get to ask our amazing guests the questions. I'm here to facilitate, or at least do my best to facilitate, and get answers to what you want to hear. On March 1st, we're pleased to welcome my amazing friend Ryan Leslie to answer your questions, followed by Tim Quirk on March 8th, and many more guests to follow. A little bit about me. I'm Benji. I'm a father. I'm a recovering musician, a coffee drinker, a frequent flyer, founder of Pledge Music, and current CEO of the Dot Blockchain Music Project. I'm also a board member of the Future Music Coalition and a Berklee alumni and teacher of digital trends and strategies. But the main reason we're here is because it's my great honor to introduce you to the amazing Zoe Keating. And Zoe and I know each other for quite a while now. We've kind of met in various places, but I can't stand when people read my bio. So Zoe, you can say as much or as little as you would like about yourself. So Zoe, who are you and what do you do?
Let's see, I'm a cellist and a composer and a mother.
Yep.
And maybe a seer of patterns, an information architect, and I don't know.
Excellent.
Human.
Human, perfect. Human and mother. I get that part very well. So the questions that have come in from you, ladies and gentlemen, have been really amazing, and we've divided them into sort of business, inspirational, artistic, and technical. So Zoe, would you like to go business, inspiration, artistic, or technical first?
Oh gosh. Surprise me.
Surprised me. Okay, I'm going to go with...
By the way, just so you know, I just checked in the live stream and I don't know if, am I there?
Yes, you are there. You are. It's all looking good. And we have sound. We're looking good. I can see it all. Okay. So, okay, I'm going to start off with this one. And this is from @Jonna Jackson. How do you balance artistic instincts and the need to bring home a paycheck?
That's a really good one. I would say that... artistic instincts and a paycheck. I say no to a lot of things. And I think I probably say no to a lot more things than I would if I didn't care about the artistic part. And
is that something that has emerged over time? Do you find that as you kind of get longer in the tooth, you're saying no to more things for that reason?
Yeah, I would say that early on in my career, I said yes to nearly everything. And then the same, whether it was... I think this is true for anybody starting out. Like you just need to figure out who you are. You need to cut your teeth. You need to be known. You need to just say yes, and you need to turn what you're doing into yours, right? And so I did a lot of saying yes to crazy things when I was younger. And then I would say recently, my time is very limited. And so it's really important that I say yes to things that are things that will allow me to grow artistically. And so an example of that is I've been composing music for television for the last couple of years. And I have some limitations on that in that I won't compose anything where I have to be someone else. Like you won't hire me to write a tango score.
Right, right.
There's going to be some stamp of Zoe on it, so you're going to recognize it as me. And I'm going to be in service of the picture. It's going to be their thing. The director absolutely has final say, and I like that aspect of it, that it's not all about me. But there's still going to be, it's going to be Zoe that you're hiring, not just a composer.
Right. And so do you enjoy the constraint of that?
I do,
mean, yeah. So because one of the things that I know that comes up a lot where in the courses that Berklee teaches, and certainly the students I've dealt with, they kind of have this, how do you manage it all? And so do you find that having that sort of artistic constraint where you've got a director or a deadline actually helps you to kind of shove the train along?
I think we all have constraints. It's just a question of acknowledging them and noticing them. I think one thing about having been doing this for a while is that now I see all the constraints, and then you can choose to sort of thrive inside of them. And early on, I set some constraints for myself in that I decided I was only going to use cello. I wasn't going to play keyboards. I wasn't going to do all I was just going to have it all be cello. So that was my box. And I've been exploring the inside of that box. And then in the world of television, it's sort of me, whatever that is. I think I've developed a style. However, I do play other instruments. So I play bass, I play guitar and piano and stuff on those scores.
What's your second best instrument that you play?
Probably keyboard, but
yeah.
badly. I mean, it's so, it's so bad.
Yeah.
I'm one of those like one finger pianists.
Because I was used to have a few drinks and I was an amazing drummer, but not to anybody
actually,
else.
Maybe percussion might be it, because I do a lot of percussion.
Yeah.
On it.
Yeah.
But
sorry.
Thanks to MIDI programming, I can do a lot of. I can actually play the cello and convert it to other instruments. For this course. But then there's the big constraint of time, and that. When you're in your 20s, time is hopefully kind of limitless. And then you realize as you get older, you're not going to have time for everything.
Yep.
And so I try to really see my time as my most valuable resource. And that as soon as my son goes off to school in the morning, it's like, okay, I have 6 hours. What am I going to do? I try to be really strategic about those 6 hours.
That's awesome. And so I'm going to ask a question now from the artistic / inspiration. So this one comes from DOA. Zoe, hello. How do you find your style, and how did you know and feel that style is yours, not just a copy of famous artists?
Yeah.
And I'll sub question: have you caught yourself in that? That sounds a little bit like.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I have. Sometimes it's accidental, though.
Yeah.
I would say that there have been times when I've heard something and I was like, wow, that is amazing. And then I want to go in the studio and figure out how they did it. And then there can become a time when it's the boundaries between what is theirs and what is yours is blurry, because you're sort of inside it figuring it out. And I would say that my style developed, like everything else, it developed kind of gradually. And I wish I had some magic thing to say about it, but it's definitely intuitive. It's very, very intuitive, and it happens when I don't care about what people think.
Can I pick on that as well? Because I know I was in researching this, I know that you talked about early on that you had stage fright.
Oh yeah.
And so there's a few questions in here kind of related to that. But so how did you end up, conquering that one? I mean, was it like as bad as Van Morrison or Jim Morrison when you had your back to the two Morrisons, when you had your back to the audience because you couldn't face them, or how did that manifest for you?
Well, initially, I think a lot of people who've seen me play live, they know that I close my eyes. And initially that started as a way for me to calm myself down, because then I couldn't see the audience.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm invisible. Now I close my eyes because it allows me to kind of just go to that other place that I have to go to in order to be a musician. Like, I feel like I can, leave our universe if my eyes are closed. But the actual stage fright, I didn't know this when I was a teenager, and it was so crippling. Like, my hands would shake, I was sweaty, I could barely play. And I didn't know that the trick is just to do it. The only way through your fear is to face it. And so I started performing non-classical music really at my warehouse that I lived in San Francisco, where I could invite friends and friends of friends over and I could play. And it was, in a way, it was making me perform in a safe environment. So that then I discovered that if I did make a mistake, I could save it. Yeah. And I sort of set up a situation where I could fail well. And then I just made it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until I really wasn't afraid anymore. And that I could recognize that, oh, I'm getting nervous. There's that feeling. I'm nervous. Okay, fine. Now go do your thing. Yeah. And it's this sort of sense of awareness.
Do you think it had anything to do with sort of like the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours? It becomes muscle memory, and you're sort of like, because and I wonder how that jives with you, because you're improvising quite a lot of the time, or most of the time. So how does that sit with you? Is it like, if my brain tells my fingers and body what to do, it will happen, so I shouldn't be nervous about it? How do you sit with that as a theory?
I have an issue where I often, if I try to think about how to play a song, I will not remember it. It's some other part of my brain that has to be accessed like unconsciously. And I have to just trust it's going to happen. And it is, in a way, the 10,000 hours that I've done it enough times that I know that when I get up there, my body will know what to do. And I know that there's times when I'm nervous for reasons I can't even figure out why. And also, I have to say, sometimes I deliberately do it because every tour, I tweak my software or I have a new piece of music I'm working on that is scary because I'm performing it for the first time. And I like that feeling because it makes me feel that scared feeling is dangerous. And that's part of the thing of being on stage. So I just know that sometimes with being nervous, I think of my first big gig, which was actually, I was in Rasputina. Yeah. And we were opening up for the Violent Femmes in New York City. It was a big, big hall.
Awesome.
And I was scared out of my mind. I was scared that I was going to be scared. And I was like, oh my God, my hands are going to shake. I'm going to freak out. Everybody's going to know I'm nervous. And I got up there. First of all, I practiced like a maniac so I could play it backwards.
Yep.
I got up there. I was nervous, but nobody knew. And that was a big deal because it was like, people can't see inside your head. I learned that I could control it, and then I could get through it. And eventually I did more than getting through. And now I love being up there. It's great.
Yeah. I always had this. So I performed for years as well. My wife can't understand. I get terrified when people do plays. Like, I cannot go to theater because I am terrified that they're going to screw things up.
Oh, wow.
And everyone will know because
for them.
Terrified. And then I'm also terrified that I'll be the one that's called on to go up and do some kind of horrific, kind of in their piece. But what's interesting is there's actually a really good question here, which is, have you ever had trouble with hecklers in live performances? And does that trigger stage fright, or have you not kind of seen that come through?
I'm totally lucky that I've never had a heckler, and either that or I'm such an egomaniac that I thought they were complimenting me.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. I used to encourage heckling and then throw it back to them.
Yeah.
So on the more on the technical side, what is your practice routine? Do you warm up before a show, and if yes, how long? That's from @YouCanDrum.
Yeah, actually, warming up is really important for any musician. For me in particular, because I have Raynaud's, the syndrome of my hands, where the circulation is not good. If I'm stressed out, everything constricts, and I need to warm up my hands in order to play. So, I actually, because you can't often practice right before you go on, I soak my hands in hot water.
Isn't that what Glenn Gould used to do as well?
Yeah, I guess he does. But I soak my hands in hot water or put them over a heater, and I spend 15 minutes warming my hands and centering myself. In the studio, I do the same thing. Like if I'm about to go recording, I warm up my hands, and then I kind of just play something that is about loosening my muscles. Like I play open strings with my arm, and I just, I have some fun and kind of relax, because recording is very intense. Like I might do the same phrase over and over and over and over again. Yeah. So I try to do something that is free and liberating. And the other thing is that maybe once a month or so, I try to play in front of a mirror. Because I get all kinds of bad habits, and playing in the mirror will show me like, oh my God, look at what you're doing.
For posture, finger kind of.
Yeah, because it's all about avoiding pain. Like if you're playing a lot, you can really injure yourself if you don't do it right. So, but you can see that right away. You can see that you're kind of like this or like this or like this, and
yeah. And I'm assuming you open your eyes for that type of thing. Oh, that was some magic trick we didn't know about. And this is a great question from @NTyrrell18. How do you know when a composition is complete, and how long do you generally spend on each piece?
Yeah, I can spend a long time on a piece. It might start as a little idea that kind of bothers me in the back of my head for months before I do anything about it. And that final polishing, the sonic polishing, can take a long time. So it can take me many months to finish a piece of music. And I know it's done when I listen to it and I get lost in it. I get lost in the feeling it's creating, and I'm not annoyed. That's how I know.
So is it a process of needling it to a certain extent? Or?
It's kind of refining things, making it so it sits well. Sometimes I have to change the voicing, take out some parts and make it ponticello instead of like pizzicato. Or, I know it's right when I can kind of lose myself in a piece of music and I can get swept up in it, and I'm not thinking about each part. So if there's anything that kind of pokes out, that'll stop me, and so I'll keep working at it until nothing pokes. Nothing's pokey.
Okay, so we're going to the business section now.
Okay.
And just, you know, one of the things that I've so admired about watching your career from where I have and is that transparency is so important to you, and the fact that you've been able to, that you've kind of said, look, this is what I get paid, and you've kind of, you know, taken on the titans of YouTube and Google in the way that you have. I really admire that. So this question came from Adam Zui, who is the great Mike King. How can a musician be successful with music composition happening more through streaming than in the past?
How can a musician be successful?
Yeah.
Well, I think you were talking right before this, before we started, about the obstacle in front of you becoming
the obstacle becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius.
So I think that the way to think of that is that it is an obstacle, but it can also be the way through, and to just think about how you know, I obviously started right before streaming, so I started in that little period between Napster and, you know, downloads were still happening, and I think, like, you know, how can that be used to your advantage? Like, to just, it is a great tool to get your music out there, and I think that you can't fight it. So I just think it's a real challenge and an opportunity for every musician to think about, like, okay, here's this way for me to get my music everywhere all at once. My job is to define myself and figure out who I am and what makes me interesting.
Yeah.
You know,
and do you have like sort of, I know that, like, because you've also been involved in the startup community, and so part of what a startup does is they sit there and they say, what does success look like and what does failure look like? Do you have those same barometers for when you're dealing with, like, okay, I used to make X amount of income doing this, that has changed, so what does success look like in streaming versus what does success look like in downloads? Because you can't really compare apples to apples. And I hear artists all the time saying things like, you know, streaming services don't pay out fairly. And I always say to them, but if they pay out 70% of all their revenue to the rights holders, is that unfair? You know, it's, you know,
I still think that, like, streaming is, like, you know, using an old business model with a new technology, and that this idea of, maybe they are paying out 70%. I think that in some ways with streaming, the money isn't as valuable, and we go down to the thing of that there's other stuff about streaming that can be valuable, but a lot of it isn't made accessible to the artist as something that they could use. And so I still think it's incredibly important for an artist to think about having as much control as possible over their relationship with their audience, because it's going to be changing all the time. If anything has been constant throughout my career, it's been that it's continually changing. And that while, like, iTunes might have been a substantial portion of my income in the past, that didn't mean it would continue that way, and I never expected it to. And I'm, in fact, surprised that it's still there. I'm surprised that it still pays my mortgage every month, because I'm not quite sure who's buying it. So I'm just, for me, that's wonderful. I'm grateful, but it's not going to continue. And I think that anybody, not just a musician, has to have a lot of baskets. You have to have a lot of baskets. Don't pursue just one thing. Don't put all your effort in Facebook. Like right now, I've been on tour recently, and I've focused entirely on giving away all my merch in exchange for email addresses.
So that's actually another question from Mike. And look, you know, I'm a massive advocate of this. You know, Pledge Music, the platform I started, we basically used to sit there and say we could predict how much money you would raise based on email, Facebook, and Twitter, with email being at the top of it. And, you know, Mike King again asked this great question, which is, you have an incredible permission-based fan community. What are the keys for successfully engaging with your existing fan base? And I think this is the one that a lot of people trip up on, is and how do you grow that fan base? How do you expand it?
Well, I would say it's a full-time job just to stay in touch with the people who are already following you. Because again, the world is always shifting. That, you know, I have 50,000 followers on Facebook. I know that if I send a message there, they're not all going to see it unless I pay to have that message be seen. And even then, you know, are they there at that time because the feed is so crowded? And then Twitter is the same thing. So I would say right now, because I've been, since my husband died 2 years ago, I've been in a bit of a holding pattern, and then I'm trying not to lose too much of my base and trying to figure out how to talk to them. And the way is still it's still email. I know that we all have 1,000 things we're subscribed to, and we're all buried under a tsunami of email, but that's still the best way for you to be nimble enough to cope with all the change so that you can reach your audience when they're there.
Yeah,
when you need them.
And if I could just say, if anyone listening here, please do understand how important that is. I know that, like, on the Berklee course and the instructors, we talk about this continuously, and I've been yelling from the top of my lungs saying that, like, oh, you know, because you often hear email will go away. It'll all be SMS, or it'll all be Snapchat, or it'll all be this. I built a massive following on MySpace back in the day, which felt like a rock, right? It felt like it was anchored, and then all of a sudden it starts to fall over. And the one thing that I believe is you're always going to need email to log into the DMV, to deal with your bank, you know, because it's a strong anchor. So I'm glad that you said that. So
yeah, and also we found, you know, phones may or may not be secure, people, but
yeah,
but you know, I just think in terms of just thinking of that, it's always going to be changing. The medium's going to be changing. How are you going to reach your audience? And in terms of how to reach them, I know that I'm never reaching them all at once. I would have to do nothing but that. And I just try to get some of them. And the other thing too is that I still do all that myself, because part of my brand, if you will, is being authentic and being me and not trying to manipulate them.
Yep, I'd love your thoughts. I take
that very seriously.
No, I can tell. You know, it's funny. I wrote this question because it really did occur to me, and you're someone who's kind of really exemplified this ability to connect with fans, ability to run a business, and then most importantly to be a mom at the same time. And those are 3 huge jobs. And so one of the things that I always say, you know, I've always advised artists that I've worked with to say, look, you should use 5% of your brains thinking about how your music should reach people. And one of the things I heard, you used the term that you thought artists should be music futurists, if you will, and that you think the artist should stand up and be a part of the conversation. So, like, if you're an artist listening right now who's sort of at the beginning of that career, and who's looking at this saying, well, there's actually quite a few things that Zoe does all the time, as well as being a mom, which is a massive job, as well as being, you know, on. Like, so the balance on that, you know, you're making a new album. Are you thinking about how the album's going to reach people? Do you have a sort of a cadence that you, in the communication, when that will start? So I'd love your thoughts on sort of how to, as an artist starting out today, look to ramp up towards where you are, and can they handle it?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, nobody lives in a vacuum, and so it's a wonderful idea to think about just me being a musician, making my own music. But of course, I'm thinking about how I'm going to get it to people, and I'm sure it's this way for other artists. But I was just in Texas last week on this tour, and I kind of scheduled that tour because I realized more that I need them. I don't need them for money. I need them because I need to express myself to other people.
Yep.
And so that's what I'm going for. I want my music to be heard, because then I'm understood as a human. That's what it's about. And so I am always thinking about, there's a gaming aspect to all of this in a way. Like, it's interesting to me, like how it's going to change. How am I going to release music? We're in this funny little trough right now, I think, between worlds, where I feel like the way that music is going to be delivered isn't there yet. So how should it be? Should I sell lamps with music embedded in them? Like, what's the way to distribute music in this right now? And I feel like there's actually, I don't know what that is. So why not think about what it could be? And my experience is that we're still sort of in this old school industry that was based on selling objects.
Yep.
And we're still applying all those rules about how do you define a single object to a piece of music. And as long as we do that, we're going to have it, there's going to be these boulders in the way of artists. So I know it's, in a way, it's a sort of a multidimensional, difficult thing to think about, but what is the way that music should be distributed and represented, and art, and not just music? And so I enjoy thinking about that, and I like the way that as a self-funded person, I can take risks and experiments. So I'm willing to try things. And when I put my music up online the first time, it was an experiment. It's like, well, I didn't get a record contract. Nobody wants me. What if I do this? And I think that that's an important thing to do, like just try stuff out. And it's also like really important to get sort of out of your music ghetto and talk to people who are not in the music industry and see how they are solving these problems, because they're having the same kind of problems, but just in different industries.
Yeah, and if I could just kind of frame it back to sort of like, so amazing advice, and I really do think that concept of like, we're not selling the object anymore, where no. it's more about that.
We're selling an experience, or access to an experience.
So there's a young girl or a young boy right now kind of looking at sort of you know, first band, first act, first performance, like, and their parents are probably saying to them, "Why would you do this? This is crazy." Mm-hmm. What would you say to them?
Why would you? This is crazy. Yeah. I would say that actually one thing, I think I was talking about economics yesterday, I was thinking about this, that who creates as much value out of almost nothing? An artist. Yeah. Like, think about it. Artists do so much with so little. If you make something that other people are interested in, that want to hear, want to see, that thing is going to sell itself over and over and over again without you having to be there, and you can make money while you sleep.
Yeah. That's a beautiful Silicon Valley thing. Always try and make money while you're asleep.
Absolutely. I realized that early on. And I'm not saying that was a goal of mine, but that's the thing about television. I write music for TV, then I get ASCAP checks in the back end if a TV show takes off. And you have to figure that, like, if things go well, and you'll have a long career that will hopefully span a long time, and you need to use all that time like amassing your catalog and all the different fingers, all the little baskets, so that can continue to earn you a living when you no longer can, when nobody wants to see your old face.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's actually a great career move. I mean, and also it's even better if you can have, some skill that allows you to have a day job and then also have music, because then your options are limitless. Like,
yeah. So great question here from Victor Murdowo. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. How do you cope with moods, as in when you have to work or play or compose music but you aren't in the mood?
Oh,
Thanks.
Yeah. That's where fear comes in.
So, interesting. Yeah.
As an example, last year I was working on the score to this TV show called Manhattan, and it was pretty relentless towards the end. There were several episodes of TV to write for, and I only had, a couple of weeks. And I was just tired. I wanted to sleep. I'd been up all night for a couple of days. And but I just have this sense of pride. Like, if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. That's not negotiable. Yeah. And then my sort of fear of not coming through on something I said I would do. And
is that learned, or is that just something? Is that learned, or is that something that's always been there for you?
I think I've always been that way. Yeah.
Yeah. But do you think it can be learned?
I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it really matters. This doesn't get said enough. I mean, it really matters to follow through on your word.
I 100% agree.
And to be nice and to be kind and to follow through. Do what you say you're going to do. And if you can't, say why. Yeah. But that's sort of like honesty, transparency, kindness, and understanding that things are just as hard for everybody else as they are for you. Like, I feel like that's across the board. Like, this is the number one things. But in terms of, like, if I have some deadline, I just have to do it. For my own music, unfortunately, I have to say that, I haven't wanted to do any of my own music for the last 2 years. And I didn't even know who I am. Like, I was together with my husband since I was 26 years old, and I didn't know who am I without him. And so I didn't know if I had anything to say. And so in those cases, I really feel like you just have to wait until you feel it. And luckily, right around November 8th, I really started feeling something.
That's awesome. Yeah,
and so it's all been like pouring out since then. So
great. So, okay, I got a technical question now from Brian Cohn, Comnes. Sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing it right. So what looper software and pedal do you use? So what looper software and pedal used? How about a functional diagram of your setup, and how many loops are pre-recorded?
Nothing pre-recorded. That's not allowed. Unless I make a mistake and forget to delete something.
Right.
But on stage, I'm using Ableton Live a great Swiss Army knife of live loopers and DJs everywhere. Every aspect of the program is configurable with MIDI, so you can control it with your feet or any other kind of controller. I use Ableton Live, a sort of a digital version of the Echoplex called Super Looper. A little bit of MIDI duct tape called MIDI Pipe, which just converts messages from one thing to another and launches Apple scripts. File menu kind of things, like there are a few annoying parts of the Ableton interface which are only accessible via like function keys, and so I have MIDI pipe to map an Apple script to a function key so I can press something with my feet, things like that, or to kill a GUI and launch a GUI. And then recently I've started using a little bit of Max MSP, but I'm having some latency issues, so I haven't incorporated it into my tour yet. So and that's it.
Awesome. And then a question from at Pat Healy. Composing as you do with technology, how much of your craft is capturing sounds you hear in your head versus arriving at something through the tools that you use?
I would say that I have a lot of musical dreams and a lot of memories of something that I think I did on stage that I don't have a recording of, and I'm trying to create that. I'm trying to create some sonic feeling. However, the more interesting things come from experiment and accident. When I do something that I didn't expect and it makes some sound that it might be considered ugly but ends up being beautiful in that context. So kind of a mixture of the two.
Awesome. A question from Sherman Jackson just came up. Will we see a Zoe cello sample library in the future?
I would like to, yes. I did a little one for an app called Looper. And there is actually, it's free. You can go in there, and I played all the sounds in there for the cello. If you select cello, that's all me. So, yeah.
Okay, excellent. You may have answered this before, but this is a good one from Emily Jones here. How do you push through a writer's block or lack of motivation to create when you're not facing a deadline? So I think you may have covered some of that with sort of like the inspiration came to you in November, but do you have a process there? Or?
I mean, there are times when I get in this situation a lot where I'm working on my own piece of music. I was in this recently, actually, and I've hit some sort of plateau with it where I'm trying to break through and I'm not inspired by it. And I think the thing to do is just to walk away. Well, like literally walk away, like go outside, take a walk, and when you come back, do something different. And then, you know, give yourself a break of a couple days or a week or whatever you need, and then come back to it with fresh ears. Yeah. You can really, I can really kill a piece by overworking it.
Awesome, awesome. And then, so what technological innovations are you most excited about? That's from Adam Zoe, Mike King.
Besides the blockchain?
Yeah. Oh, look, I didn't say it. I didn't say it. I get in trouble every time I say it. Yeah.
I'm excited about that. I think that we're not anywhere close yet. But I think that long term, that's exciting. Let's see, what else am I excited about?
Anything sort of in the musical space that you're excited about? And also, we're going to have Gerhard, the CEO of Ableton, on one of these chats in the future. So I will directly convey anything you need to him.
Okay. I did have somebody at Ableton tell me a few years ago, and I'm sure it's no longer true, that they didn't know of anybody else using the software the way I was. And it was sort of a way to sidestep my complaints about something. But they said, well, you might be the only one using it that way. But I suspect that a lot of people are using it the way I am now. So
yeah. And are there any innovations in social media or any platforms that you're seeing that are kind of really sort of that you think, wow, I wish I'd had that 10 years ago, or anything there? Or is it, you know, apart, because email's pretty old if we think about it.
Incredibly old. Yeah. You know, it's interesting because I used to be the person who would want to try every new thing, and I was curious about it. It was sort of like a hobby, and I've had to trim off a lot of that part of my life just because I don't have enough time. So I have not explored the world of Snapchat. I would say that I diverge with a lot of people in that I could care less about video, and in fact, if something is video only, I don't watch it. Yep. Something live like this I will, but it's like, for the most part, I want to more than ever, I want to control my space. And controlling my space often means reading. Because I feel like we are suffering a little bit from a lack of control around our lives, around, you know, just constant
dopamine hits of you know, push notifications.
In Facebook, and now in the news cycle. I mean, with, you know, the current administration, like it's I think a lot of people are having their sort of like their psyche and their time chipped away by these things, and you have to be really active about figuring out how to do it. So in some ways, I'm going backwards, and I'm figuring out what do I need. I'd say that the power button is my favorite technology right now. Just turning something off. That's
a good one. Yeah. And so, you know, it's been said that a ton of entrepreneurs and you know, some of the most successful people in the world read a lot. We were briefly discussing this, and Zoe was about to tell me what she was reading, but I asked her not to. So what are the last kind of few books that you've read that have really sort of turned it up a notch for you and that you're inspired by? I
usually have a pile that I'm working through. I'm mostly nonfiction books. Let's see, right now I've just been reading a book called Neurotribes. It's great, Steve Silverman, Neurotribes. It's sort of a look at autism and Asperger's, and looking at it through the lens of like, we need all these different ways of seeing the world in order to survive as a species, rather than seeing it as a disorder. And I've been pretty interested in that. So I've been reading that. And then fiction, I'm reading a great book about a 7th century girl named Hild. It's a fictionalization of St. Hilda's life. And it's great. It's written by a historian who's like full of detail about like the lives of people in the 7th century.
I love those kind of historical novels. I just read
Takes place in Northumberland mostly.
Yeah, I read The Thousand Autumns of Jacob the Zoet, which was amazing. It was set in Japan at the time of the East India Company, and a sort of a chaotic Dutch people on an island there. And then what about any musical inspiration books that you've been reading? Any biographies? Anything? No is an okay answer.
That's okay. I've been listening to classical music a lot. I have to say that for the first year after my husband died, I could not listen to music. It would just reduce me to a puddle of tears. And music being the way that I express myself emotionally through the world, it's also the way that I hear things emotionally. And I would let myself go there sometimes, but I couldn't function as a parent and do all the things I needed to do if I did that. So so I didn't listen to any music. And recently I've been rediscovering all those like solid classical pieces that I love so much. And I've been listening to Elgar, and I've been listening to Beethoven, and I feel like I'm rediscovering it again. And in all of its their beauty. And so I have to say that you know, after being into sort of like fringe popular music and electronica for so long, I started out with classical, and now I'm going back to classical right now.
Do you have any standby recordings that just you couldn't live without in the classical space?
I have to say there's this one that I'm sure a lot of classical people will roll their eyes, and it's Dawn Upshaw singing Goretzky's Third Symphony.
Right.
And that wrecks me every time, and I just love it. It's so good.
Wow.
It's so cathartic. It's so slow. It takes forever to listen to. It's not something you just listen to in 5 minutes.
It's funny. In Brooklyn here, I've built a massive classical playlist, and it begins with Bieber, and there's a ton of Beethoven in it. I've been a massive Beethoven fan my whole life. Johannes Bieber, not Justin Bieber.
I was joking.
The other Bieber. Yeah.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, the original Bieber, not the.
It's okay. You can say you like Justin Bieber. He's Canadian.
No, I can never forgive him because he touched the Stanley Cup, and he'll never be forgiven for that. Yeah, that was too much. But anyway, back to the actual questions. Repeating Twitter question. So this is from Adam Sterr, S-T-E-R-R. He said, Zoe, your success and influence has the power to nurture less established artists. When touring, what do you look for in an opening act respect?
Yeah. Well, I would say that recently I haven't had an opening act because so many people in the audience have kids, and I'm trying to get them home early.
Yep.
And so I have to say that there's been a trend not towards having one. And my next album cycle, I would like to have somebody in each city. And I was thinking of doing what my friend Imogen had done, where she had a contest where she had people send in their submissions and she chose someone. But I want someone who has, I don't know, I'm interested in people who are approaching things from another direction, who have something unique to say and are just being themselves and being genuine. And you'd be surprised at how hard that is to find, or how hard that is to gauge from people's promotion materials.
Yeah.
So, and in a way, it's like the industry as a whole, right? This is how audiences are. We are looking for that. We're looking for that connection from someone. And how do you find it? Like, where do you look? So I'm all ears in terms, if anybody has an idea how I can find people.
Yeah.
You know,
good.
I know that for myself, like those opening gigs were really important for my career and helped me get where I am. So I want to be able to help other artists that way. So
it's difficult though, because you also don't want to open up the floodgates and then all of a sudden you can't handle the inbound as well. I can see that.
Right. I know it's tricky because I want to be able to do that, and also I'm interested in what people are doing.
Yeah.
But it can't be a full-time job, so it's tricky. I think this is where probably maybe for some period of time I need to work with someone who could filter some of that for me. Maybe I have a lot of ideas along that way, but.
And then I got a question here, which is, how do you organize your technical practice time? As a busy musician, do you force yourself to get back to the basics and practice scales, arpeggios, etc.? From Sherman Jackson.
I'm sure that any cellist who's come to see me recently is thinking she really needs to practice her scales.
I'm sure that's what they're thinking.
Because I am really remiss.
Gotcha. But so do you have a sort of organizational time or a plan for that, or is it just?
I used to always try to play a movement of a Bach cello suite, and I would work on some non-common scale.
Yep.
Like play it, because when I'm lazy, I get into habits. I'm like, everything's in D minor.
The saddest of all possible keys.
Exactly. Yeah. The saddest of all. That never gets old.
Yeah. Spinal Tap is the greatest film ever made.
Really. I feel like, it is.
So a couple of questions that I've got for you here. Why is transparency important in terms of, you've obviously published oftentimes your royalty statements, and do you think it's attainable? And my sub question would be, do you think that a blockchain is the only way it will happen, or do you think it can happen in a centralized way?
I think it could happen in a centralized way. I think it's really important because I started doing it since I noticed there were just a lot of misconceptions about how artists make livings. And so I felt like, gosh, all these things I'm reading, it's not true for me. So why don't I talk about what's true for me, since I do it in everything else? And I think that kind of, got some traction, and other people started doing it too. There is this problem that artists are always trying to look bigger than they really are. And that and there's a lot of fear around that. And so I think that perhaps a lot of the entities that are more concerned about money and popularity, maybe record labels and maybe other entities, they might be concerned about showing the truth. And they might not want to show the truth about an artist's reach. And I think that you just have to be comfortable. Like, I'm perfectly fine with the fact that I'm this sort of niche artist, that I'm not Beyonce. I'm not going to have the numbers that she does. So, and I have nothing to lose. I think as long as you're looking to be #1 in everything, then yeah, you have a lot to lose if you're suddenly it's proven that you're not #1. But I really think that could just be a much more fertile, more interesting landscape of music if we had more of a middle. And I don't know. For me, I think transparency is important, and I think that it is possible.
Yeah. But I guess, do you think it's possible? I mean, look, everyone's kind of taken a hammer at this in different directions, and to me, there is a certain amount of you got to force it, another amount that's got to come. But the way that I see it is when we look at the size of the companies, and you've had direct experience of this, like YouTube or Spotify or SoundCloud, these are massive organizations grown off the backs of the works that
Sure,
yourselves and others.
Music is a lost leader for nearly all these companies.
Yeah,
but so, Amazon just did this, right? Amazon just had free streaming because they wanted to use it as a way to expand. So it's well known.
Yeah, and I guess so. To that line, is this, do you think, the best or the worst time to be in the music industry?
Both, absolutely both.
Oh wow.
I think it's the best and the worst time. Get your head around that one. It's like the way that I am both very lucky and very unlucky.
Excellent. Listen, I know you have a hard stop, so I'm going to ask one last question, which is this was asked to me on a panel at the board of Future Music Coalition about 6 years ago. It was one of my favorite questions ever, which is, if you could wave a magic wand and change anything about the music industry, what would it be?
Oh wow. I really wish that we had gotten this sort of metadata blockchain-y discussion on earlier, because boy, is it hard to shoehorn everything after the fact. I feel like we started making the world of sharing and openness without having any kind of way to track it or link it back to the original creators, whether for money or for not just. We're still using that thing of selling the metadata that's used to sell an object is still the metadata on a song. Yeah. It's like you've got the title and the owner. Like it's all about ownership and payment. And I really wish that we had gotten some of that a little bit earlier so that we didn't have to figure out how to fit this on.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Zoe, I want to thank you so much for being a part of our inaugural first edition of this interview series. I want to thank Mike King, Jesse Borkowski, Jana Jackson, Kaylee Kravitz, Pat Healy, Josh, whose last name I don't have in front of me, and the entire team at Berklee for making this happen. We'll do another one on March 1st and then March 9th. And Zoe, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, Benji. Thank you, everybody, for the questions.
Really appreciate it. Take care, everyone. Bye.